One of the best times during my childhood life is watching TV. There were so many shows I watched as a kid, so many great memories. There was TV shows I watched, but the more I got older, the less I forget about the shows. This is a video I wanted to do for a while after 2 videos I did last year, and I'm sure this video will follow the same way, but there's some I didn't even talk about in other videos. This video is going to be a top 10 since that series needs more attention. 2 of my top list videos I did last year were not great because at the time, this is before I gained subscribers. But to be fair, it was the start for more. So in this video, I'm going to do top 10 TV shows I have watched as a kid, but watched less. I know it's a complicated list, but it'll be a fun one to do. So here are my own rules I added. Number 1, it has to be shows between when I was little and between age 11. Second rule, I'm only picking kid shows. I would include teenager and mature shows, but I can't. I also didn't include Disney Channel shows because none were on the list and some I've watched them on Disney Plus. That's out the window. I will be including Cartoon Network because I didn't grow up with the channel. There's a couple I could include, but I remember them more. And while it was hard to list some shows that I watched as a kid, but it didn't take that long before I checked. Also, none of these shows on the list I recall being dull or terrible. The shows were passable, but not memorable. So, let's get started with top 10 TV shows I have watched, but less. Number 10, Rocket Power. This show may seem up my alley. It's got extreme sports and it gives me 90s, 2000 vibes. However, when I was young, I remember watching on Nickelodeon. I just don't remember much, and even the extreme sports, while I like it as a kid, just didn't excite me, and they had competitions in the show. There's 2 issues with it. 1, it came out in 1999. Guess what came out the same year? Yep, SpongeBob came out that year, though it premiered in May while Rocket Power premiered in August. Talk about cutting it close. Another issue, and that is the creators of the show. Yep, Klasky and Supo created this show, in which they worked on Nick shows like the iconic Rugrats, plus its spin-offs, All Real Monsters, The Wild Thornberrys, and then a year later with As Told by Ginger. Anyways, back to Rocket Power. The extreme sports were great choices because they were popular during the 90s. Even extreme sports popped up in video games. They had surfing games, snowboarding games, and even Tony Hawk's skateboarding games. As for the characters, I didn't find Otto, Reggie, Squid, or Twister memorable. The location in the show was great. It actually reminded me of Southern California Beach, in which I live in California, and they have great beaches and areas. The show didn't have a big movie, which they went with a TV movie for the finale in 2004, which it ran for 5 years. They aired it with other Nick channels, but I didn't watch them on there. You can actually watch them on Paramount Plus, so maybe I'll watch them. I put Rocket Power low on the list because I do remember recording one of the episodes on a blank VHS, plus the theme song was hummable, though the intro had crazy filters. Aside from that, Rocket Power is one of those shows I did watch, but not a lot as like Rugrats, Hey Arnold, SpongeBob, and others. It wasn't memorable. Also, this is not the only Nick cartoon show on this list, so you'll see another one soon. Number 9, Magic School Bus. First PBS Kids show on the list, and that's not the only one. So I had a hard time picking shows from the channel, and I went, yeah, this has to be it. I do remember watching the show when it was on, but I don't remember too much. Miss Frizzle's the only character I did remember. She was optimistic, caring, and friendly. The kids of hers, I remember the designs, but not much of the names. Well, Arnold a little bit, I know him. The one I remembered in the show is the bus itself. It can transform into anything and even has a face. Yeah, don't you wish a bus had those instead of that? The only downside of the show is that PBS ran the show until 1997. I was 2 years old when it was on. That's how I barely remembered. Though Fox Kids ran after it, and then moved to other channels. Though you can watch the show on Netflix, and you can watch the episodes on YouTube from the channel Nelvana shows. Will I watch the show in the future? Maybe, but I'm not in a rush. As for the reboot that came out on Netflix, yeah, just skip. I heard that it didn't have good scores. For a school education show, I liked it okay, but it had the least impact. Number 8, a tie between All That and The Amanda Show. I'm sorry, I couldn't choose between the two, so I went with both, and it's a coincidence since both shows were created by Dan Schneider. Anyways, about these shows. Both of them I did watch when they were on, but I clearly forgot what happened in those episodes. I'll start with All That since it's not too bad. All That was a sketch comedy show, which as a kid, this was my introduction. A kid's version of Saturday Night Live, if you will. All That had so many sketches, though I understand not all of them were great or funny. I mean, the Good Burger sketch is iconic, and they made a movie out of the sketch. But other than that, I don't remember almost all of the sketch. There is one sketch I remembered a lot, and this is probably the funniest sketch in the show, and that is The Loud Librarian.
No talking! This is a library! It must be quiet! People are trying to study!
I will admit, the idea sounds great. She's the one telling the kids not to make noises or don't talk in the library, but when the kids say nothing, she's the one making noises. That's pretty funny. So yeah, that's the only memorable thing in the entire show. Aside from the sketches, the intro song is pretty catchy. Yeah, any intro songs I know are catchy. The cast members was pretty good at the time. While I barely don't remember these 3, the other 4 were iconic. Keenan, Kel, Lori, and Josh. Even some cast joined later on, but 1/3 I don't know them. Yeah, the show ran until 2005, then a revival in 2019. Though you could say I was gonna kick All That off the list because of the revival, but like I said, I didn't watch the original much. You can actually watch them on Paramount Plus or Netflix for that. Now, on to The Amanda Show. It's almost about the same as All That. I say almost because I did watch the show, but I don't remember much. Which, it's right down the same sketch comedy as All That. I'll start off with the ones I remembered. First is, this was my introduction to Amanda Bynes. That's right, not these ones, this show. But she wasn't the only one in the cast. 5 others joined, which some of them would later on appeared in Dan's other show, Drake and Josh. How convenient. The sketches, for the most part, I remembered, like the Judge Trudy one, where it's a spoof of Judge Judy, Penelope Tant sketch, Mr. Oldman, in which that's the creator playing the character, and Hillbilly Moment. Okay, that sketch I remember in my head because I remember how stupid it was, but that's about it from the sketches. The previews I remembered, but that's about it. The intro song is okay, but it's nowhere near as catchy as All That intro. So yeah, when the show was on, I watched it, and then I moved on to the next show. The show ran until 2002, and I was 7 years old when it ended. And understandably, because it aired for 3 years, that I barely remembered much. Now, I will say, I'm thinking about watching the show again to see if I'll remember. Will it be memorable? Probably not, but I just remember liking it fine. Though, I will like the Block Blister sketch now that I'm older. But yeah, it was tough choosing these 2 shows for the list. But hey, I watched them on TV, both of them are sketch shows, and both of them are created by Schneider. What's not to say? Number 7, Franklin. First Nick Jr. show on the list. Well, the show originally aired in Canada. Okay, I didn't know the show was from Canada, but during my life, it was on Nick Jr. in the US. Based off the books of them, the show focused on Franklin, a young turtle who does anything a normal kid can do. You know, going to school, having adventures, learning in the world, and helping a hand of his parents. Which, the show does celebrate the innocence of childhood, in which I do like it. The only downside with the show is I don't remember what happens in the episodes. Though, the beginning with the narrator I remember because the narrator would say Franklin could count by 2s and tie his shoes. But I will say, it's a little memorable than the other Nick Jr. shows on the list, but it's not higher than Blue's Clues. I'll give credit that the show aired from the late 90s, in which I grew up with that era, but I wanted to include it on the list, and who knows, maybe I'll watch a few episodes. It will stay on the list for now. Number 6, The Angry Beavers. Yes, I did watch this show as a kid, though I was this close to putting it on my top 5, but it didn't make it close. Two beaver brothers named Norbert and Daggett live in a forest after moving out of their parents' home, and that's about it. Unlike Rocket Power, where I know very little about the show, this one I don't remember anything. I really don't think it's the most memorable Nicktoons show, but it's not the worst. There's some bad Nicktoons shows. This one I don't remember other than watching it when I was little. I had to watch the intro and an episode clip, and yeah, it's not memorable. It's not all bad. The animation is good and the two brothers are okay, but I didn't have any fond memories watching it. I watched the Wild Thornberrys and I remember that show more than the Angry Beavers, but yeah, just not a memorable Nicktoons show. Number 5, Jackie Chan Adventures. Another show I actually did watch as a kid, and the first Kids WB show on the list. Kids WB was also part of my childhood, and for some reason I watched this. Hear me out. I wanted to see a show based off of Jackie Chan's actual work. Jackie Chan's an actor, but he's also a martial artist and a stuntman. This guy is so great, I really wanted to see his movies in live action. And while it's nice that the show is a cartoon version of the actor, I barely remember what happened. In fact, the show ran for 5 years and has 95 episodes. Man, that show was long. I watched an episode before I did the video, and it's good, just not as memorable as I thought. But it was part of my childhood, after all. Number 4, Little Bear. Similar to Franklin, this show was from Canada and produced by Nelvana. It came out on Nick Jr. in the US in 1995, the year I was born. So yeah, one of the shows I did watch on the channel on par with Blue's Clues. Unlike Blue's Clues, where it was memorable as a kid, this one I did watch, but I don't remember much. I know it was advertised and I remember the previews on VHS, but yeah, I had to clue it higher because I was a toddler when it was on TV. But I did watch it, and yeah, I like the variety of characters. I like that it's historical and educational, but that's about it. And no worries, this is not the Nick Jr. show I watched the least. Number 3, Kipper. Yes, this was the Nick Jr. show I watched the least. It's based off the books, and the show is from Britain. At least the show is not Canada. In the Nick Jr. video I did, I talked about the show for like 4 seconds, and that was it. The theme song is not bad, but other than watching on Nick Jr. in the US, I clearly don't remember what happened. Unlike the other two where I remember certain parts. Oh well, I had to put on the list for that. Number 2, Baby Looney Tunes. Okay, yes, I watched this show, though the show is aired in networks. It was on Kids WB when it debuted in 2002. Then in the same year, Cartoon Network aired it and continued until it ended in 2005. Yeah, that's one of the main problems with the show, is the airing. Out of all the shows that are actually not bad, this one is a strange show that I watched. Like, I grew up with Looney Tunes and I thought the concept of them turning into babies is not bad, even though other shows already made jokes like that. I don't hate this show, but I didn't watch much after seeing a couple episodes. I know there's other Looney Tunes shows during the 2000s, like Duck Dodgers and Lunatics Unleashed, which that one got despised. So yeah, Baby Looney Tunes will stay in spot for number 2 for not watching the show much. And now, it's time for the number 1 show I have watched the least. What show made it on the list? Alright, here's the number 1 show I barely watched as a kid. And it's Wishbone. Yes, out of all the shows on this list, Wishbone is the show I have watched the least. I'm not saying I watched it 0 times. Oh no, I have watched it when I was really little. But the biggest problem to me personally, I don't remember anything from the show, like, at all. The only thing I remember to this day from the show is the theme song. I still remember the theme song, like it's catchy and it gets in my head every time I hear the lyrics, "What's the story, Wishbone?" Another main problem with the show is the airing. The show premiered in 1995, which I was a baby, and then the show ended in 1997. I was 2 years old when the show ended. The show ended way too quickly, and that's the reason why this show was one I watched the least as a toddler of my age, mind you. So yeah, I had to put on number 1 because it ended too quickly during my childhood. I don't remember anything, and it didn't have a big impact on me. Thankfully, I watched a few clips on YouTube, and the show itself is not bad. But yeah, Wishbone is the number 1 show I watched the least. And that is all for the top 10 TV shows I watched the least as a kid. This video was an interesting one, but I wanted to try something different. Now, am I going to do movies I watched the least as a kid list? Oh, definitely yes, but I'm going to give it a couple years to work on that. But the movies will be far better than TV shows. You'll see when the video gets it. That was all for the top 10 video. Next video will be a topic video. But I will see you all in the next video.